Hello, and welcome to Transgendered Movie Reviews. I'm your host, T-Girl Alexa. Well, I'm out of my boys' clothes. I'm all dolled up, with nowhere to go. With that said, let's talk about Ed Wood. In 1980, 2 years after his death, Edward D. Wood Jr. received the Golden Turkey Award from the people at the prestigious Razzies, giving him the title of Worst Director of all time. Now, I personally think there are much worse directors out there. Ahem. But I am appreciative of the cult following the title has garnered him. Now, I genuinely love the films of Ed Wood. Yes, they are incompetent, so gloriously incompetent. But there's something extremely likable about them. Now, over the course of this series, I intend to highlight more of Wood's oeuvre, but for now, let's just look at his directorial debut. In 1952, playwright and aspiring filmmaker Edward D. Wood Jr. convinced sexploitation producer George Weiss to let him direct I Changed My Sex, a film based off the life of Christine Jorgensen, the first trans woman to be widely known for having sex reassignment surgery. Shot in 4 days, the film received a limited release, but garnered a cult following after renewed interest in Wood's work in the 1980s. Which is good, because this movie is entertaining as fuck. So, without further ado, let's look at Glen or Glenda. Or Bela Lugosi in Glen or Glenda. I'm sorry. Now, I don't know who this Tommy is, but I think him and Bud have a lot of explaining to do. Our film opens with Bela Lugosi as a mad scientist. Or God. I think he's supposed to be God. God with lab equipment and skeletons. I don't know.
Life has begun.
Now, he's not just the omniscient narrator. He interferes with events in the film. He's the one that... what's the phrase?
Pull the string.
Exactly. And don't worry, every word that comes out of his mouth is pretty much batshit insane.
Beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. He eats little boys. Puppy ducktails and big fat snails. Beware. Take care.
Jesus Christ! Lugosi is saddened by the suicide of a trans woman, because it's not like he could have prevented it. It's not like he's God or anything. Actually, this scene is pretty poignant. The suicide rates among transgendered individuals are astronomical, going up to 50% among pre-op transsexuals. Kudos to Wood for being able to, in 1953, tap into a social issue that is still swept under the rug today. A trans woman had killed herself after being arrested for the 4th time for wearing women's clothing in public. The inspector of the case is justifiably disturbed by this and goes to a psychiatrist specializing in gender issues to help ease his mind. The therapist then prepares to tell the story of 2 different cases of gender identity, even though...
Only the infinity of the depths of a man's mind can really tell the story.
Do that!
The story is begun.
Great. I just shit myself. The first story is about Glen, a man with a secret desire to wear women's clothing. Glen is played by Wood himself. Glen or Glenda is partially autobiographic. Wood in real life was a transvestite, a man with an inclination to wear women's clothing. Yeah, I have no idea what that's like. Now, I do understand that some of the adjectives I'm using for trans individuals might be confusing to some people. So, now I think it's time for... Welcome, class. The first word of the day is transgender. Can you say that with me? Transgender. Good. Transgender is a blanket term covering a large range of gender identities, but basically a transgendered individual is a person whose gender identity or expression does not match their assigned sex. Now, Eddie was a transvestite or crossdresser, meaning that he wore the clothing of and acted in a manner associated with the opposite gender. This is not to be confused with a transsexual, who is a person that has a gender identity that does not match those culturally associated with assigned sex. A transsexual may go through hormone treatment or sexual reassignment surgery to help their bodies to align with this identity. I don't want to overly simplify a complex subject like gender identity, but I guess for me, a transvestite is someone who at the end of the day knows that he or she is a boy or a girl, while a transsexual feels that on the inside they are women or men. Now, I use the term T-girl, which is short for trans girl, and even though what I do can be considered cross-dressing, on the inside I feel like I am a girl and not a boy. And I hope to one day pursue hormone treatment or get cosmetic surgery in order for my body to match my identity. Okay, enough about little old me. Let's get back to the movie. So before Wood dives into the story, he gives us a little lecture about how silly he thinks transphobia is by comparing it to the naysaying of other scientific advances.
Airplanes. Why, it's against the Creator's will. If the Creator wanted us to fly, he'd have given us wings.
Automobiles? Bah. They scare the hosses. If the Creator had meant for us to roll around the countryside, we'd have been born with wheels.
Just so you know, this is how every homophobic bigot I've ever encountered sounds in my head.
If the Creator had wanted us to fly, he'd have given us wings.
If the Creator had meant us to roll around the countryside, we'd have been born with wheels.
If the Creator had meant us to be boys, we certainly would have been born boys.
If the Creator had meant us to be born girls, we certainly would have been born girls.
Are we sure?
I was sure, but now you ask that question and I don't know what's real anymore. Now, the film is done in this 1950s PSA style, with a voiceover narrating events of the film. The kind of thing you would see in the Shorts Mystery Science Theater would riff. Which, now that I mention it, why didn't MST3K do this film? They showcased other Ed Wood flicks. This would be one of their better episodes. A lot of the film takes elements from Wood's actual life. The love interest is played by Ed's then-girlfriend Dolores Fuller. In fact, the film makes a specific point in making sure that you know Glen is straight.
Glen is a transvestite, but he is not a homosexual.
Which is true. Your gender identity has nothing to do with your sexual identity. But I do get this vibe that even though the film does feel that cross-dressing's okay, being gay is something not to be desired. It's not overt, it's just a feeling that I get. Now, as we go through the film, Wood takes us on crazy tangents, like on how hats cause receding hairlines, how men doll themselves up in native culture, how men design women's clothing. All this to support his thesis that wearing women's clothing is okay, but it just comes off as though he's overly explaining himself. I wish that he made more of a we're here, we're queer, get used to it stance. Sometimes you just gotta state the facts and let the audience deal with it. So, we get a little history on Glen's life as he borrows his sister's dress for Halloween, gets first prize, but is caught by his sister for continuing to dress after the holiday. Now, get ready for the best acting you've ever seen as the sister tells her friend about Glen at the water cooler.
Suppose I were to come home with Roy or one of my other boyfriends some night and find Glen like I did last night.
Yeah, that would be hard to explain.
That's the understatement of the year. Just how does one go about introducing your friends to your brother when brother's wearing your best sweater and your skirt and makeup to boot?
Great job reading those cue cards, honey. Now Wood then goes on another tangent because we can't go 30 seconds focusing on Glen, but this one's actually thought-provoking. It goes through different women talking to a judge while divorcing their husbands for their trans nature.
But Your Honor, ruffles on his shirts and shorts. Really?
This actually happens. I've never been through it myself, but if the courts tend to favor women over men in divorce, you can only imagine how they'll treat a trans individual. So Glen's main problem is his fiancée Barbara. He loves her and wants to marry her, but he's unsure how she will take to his other half, Glenda.
Come on, tell me, darling. Who knows? Maybe I can help.
That's just it, you could. Then something is troubling you.
Yes.
I love hokey music in scenes like this.
Do I have a right to know?
You have a right to know.
Glen, is it another woman?
What? Buffalo? Why are there buffalo on the screen?
Hold the string! Hold the string!
Can someone explain this to me? Because the movie sure as fuck isn't going to. No, instead we're going to hear a conversation from Joe and Mac. Who are Joe and Mac? Fuck if I know.
Say, did you read about the guy that aims to a girl? Says he was perfectly normal, too.
How can a guy be normal and go and do a thing like that to himself?
All the same, it must take a lot of guts to pull a stunt like that.
That's a problem I don't ever intend to face. You sound as if you're really head up on this thing.
I guess I am.
Do you realize what would happen if every man in the country that wanted to wear women's clothes or felt like a woman went to their doctors and wanted to change?
Then the world would be fabulous.
Another day done. Thank goodness. See you tomorrow, Jack.
Did Jack just die? So, as he's a friend who is also a transvestite, who tries to convince him that he needs to tell Barbara.
You love her?
Very much.
Does she love you?
Yes.
There's no problem. Marry the girl.
Are you forgetting about my other self?
You'll have to tell her, of course.
And he should. Glenn should be completely honest with his partner. And he does come to this inevitable conclusion, but first we have to have this batshit insane nightmare sequence.
Everything nice. Ha ha ha.
At the beginning of the dream sequence, Barbara is stuck under a tree. As Glenda, her fiancé is unable to help her. As Glen, he can lift the tree out of the way. Glen feels that only as a man will he be able to love and protect Barbara. The dream then goes on to show Glen and Barbara getting married. And I just love how Satan shows up. He's like,
"Hey guys, what's up?"
And then we cut to this. Bela Lugosi watching a woman getting beat with a belt. I guess we're just going to dive into God's porn stash. There are two girls who striptease. One of the dancers then ties a woman to a couch. Then Lugosi intensely watches a woman get raped on that very same couch. I thought I was watching a movie about a transvestite, not Last House on the fucking Left. So after that unnecessarily disturbing rape thing, Glen's dream continues. He's surrounded by friends and family who point at him and judge him, but then he turns into Glenda, killing all the power they have over him. He then sees Barbara, and they move towards each other with outstretched arms when... So after the nightmare, Glen decides to tell Barbara. This is the most iconic moment in the film, when Barbara gives Glen her pink Angora sweater, showing her acceptance for his ways. We then go to the second story, which gets shoehorned at the end of the film. This is the story of Alan or Anne. Glen, Glenda, Alan, Anne, Wilma. If any of you fucking call me Wilma, I'm gonna rip your fucking throat out. As a child, Alan's mother would dress him up as a girl and have him do womanly chores around the house. As an adult, he would fight in World War II, cross-dressing on the weekends. After seeing a gender therapist, it is found out that Alan is a pseudo-hermaphrodite.
A hermaphrodite is one who has the organs of both the male and female in plain sight. A pseudo-hermaphrodite is one who has one perfectly formed organ of either sex and one imperfectly formed one that's difficult to detect. Alan was of the latter.
Alan decides to get some surgeries to become more and more feminine and live full-time as a woman. Now living full-time as a woman, Anne seems happy and content with her life. And even though she is a fictional character, it does bring me a lot of joy to see Anne being fulfilled by accepting her gender identity. So that's basically Glen or Glenda. But there's just one scene, besides the rape scene, that I have a problem with. While Anne does get sexual reassignment surgery, the movie makes it clear that this is not the right path for Glen, which is true. There are many identities on the spectrum of gender, and surgery and hormones is not required for all transgendered identities. But at the end of the film, Glen and Barbara go to the shrink to talk about an end to Glen's dressing as Glenda. They say that Glenda is just a character that Glen created in his mind, that they can get rid of her and Glen can go back to living his life as a man. This is called a purge, where a trans individual will throw away all their clothing and items associated with the opposite gender and go back to living their life emulating their assigned sex. And it never fucking works. Eventually you'll come back to your old ways. I had a purge that lasted 6 years, and look at me now. I don't agree with this film calling Glenda just a character in Glen's mind. Glenda is a part of Glen's personality, part of who he is as a person. Saying that you can just up and quit, that it is a disease that can be cured, shows a narrow view of transvestitism. And I don't think Wood believed this. There was never any indication that he quit dressing after this movie was released. Still, I adore this film, despite some of its rape-related flaws, and not completely in some hipster ironic way like a lot of people who watch Wood's films, even though there is a lot to laugh at. I have a lot of respect for Glen or Glenda. This movie came out in 1953. 1953! We still don't talk about transgendered issues today. And it is a very personal film for Wood. He was a transvestite. His mom did dress him up in women's clothing. Wood did fight in World War II, with ladies' undergarments under his uniform. This is the story of his life. This movie was Wood's way of coming out to the world, of telling his then-girlfriend Dolores Fuller, of explaining to the world who he is, embracing that he is different, and asking the world to accept him for it. And I can identify with that. There's a reason I picked this movie as my first episode. This is my way of coming out to the world. For many friends and family, this is the first they'll see of Alexa, the person I am on the inside. On April 1st, 2014, I came out of the closet, first to my therapist and then to my mother, which, word of advice, never come out to your parents on April Fool's Day. Over the next couple of weeks, I came out to other friends and family, and it's the best decision I've ever made. I hated myself. I suffered from depression, self-image problems, suicidal thoughts and tendencies. I almost killed myself last year. And now I've come out, and everything seems better. The world just seems brighter. I look forward to tomorrow because I embraced who I am on the inside. I embraced that I am a girl. And my friends and family have done nothing but love and support and accept me. And I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought everyone was going to hate me, and now that they haven't, I love you guys so much. I can't even begin to tell you how great I feel. And I know it's going to be a long journey, changing my body to match my identity, but I know I can do it. And I know I have a support system to help me do it. And that makes life wonderful. But what of the other less fortunate Glens, the world over? Oh, snips and snails, and puppy dogs' tails.
Where is she going?
I don't know.
Hey guys, what's up?